For years, an epic war raged between humanoids blessed by the god of light and demons empowered by the god of darkness. After endless bloodshed, a band of heroes finally storms the Demon Lord's castle to end it once and for all. But just before the throne room, the team is ambushed by a nasty demon. Theron tells Kyle and Urza to press on while he plays solo tank. They nod, knowing full well Theron isn't walking out of this one. Once inside the throne room, disaster strikes. Shadowy spheres of dark matter rain down from above. Kyle tries to block them, but it's too much. At the last second, Urza dives in to protect him and is completely disintegrated. R.I.P. Magic MVP. With dramatic timing, the Demon Lord appears, ready to finish things. Enraged, Kyle charges in like an angry bull, only to dodge another barrage of dark blasts by hiding behind a pillar. He quickly realizes this isn't just any attack, it's elimination, an unblockable spell that erases anything it touches. Yeah, not ideal. Kyle knows he won't land a hit unless he risks everything. So, he unleashes the full power of the magic gem in his sword. The result? One epic stab straight through the Demon Lord, who goes kaboom. Victory. Except Kyle's sword is wrecked, and he's fatally injured. He saved the world but lost everything. His friends, his family, his home. He collapses, ready to embrace the sweet release of death, until the Demon Lord's magic gem suddenly goes haywire. With no one controlling it, it could blow up the entire planet. So, barely alive, Kyle crawls to the gem and grabs it. Flash! He wakes up in his childhood bed. Totally confused, Kyle checks the window. His hometown, burned to ash in the past, is standing tall and peaceful. He's stunned. Then his childhood friend Layla walks in, worried. Kyle freezes, speechless. Is this real? A dream? Hallucination? Doesn't matter, he's just happy to see her. So he hugs her tight. Layla, flustered, asks what he's doing, but Kyle is too caught in the moment. She tries to escape, but he holds on, and they both tumble onto the bed in a very non-platonic position. The tension skyrockets. Problem is, they're not at that stage of the relationship yet. Layla's face shifts from red to furious. She punches Kyle so hard he does a triple flip midair. Now groaning in pain, Kyle gets scolded hard. She storms out, yelling something about warnings and emotional prep time. Lying there in agony, Kyle realizes something wild. That punch hurt. If this were just a dream, he wouldn't feel anything, right? He pulls back the covers, and there it is. The Demon Lord's magic gem glowing ominously. So yeah, whatever's going on, this dream just got a whole lot more complicated. Now certain this is reality, Kyle walks to the mirror to get a good look at himself and is shocked. He looks much younger than he did during the war. Even stranger, he clearly remembers suffering several fatal injuries during the battle with the Demon Lord. Yet now his body is perfectly healthy. His hometown is intact, and Layla is alive. With all this in mind, Kyle concludes that he must have somehow returned to the past, and the only clue he has is the Demon Lord's magic gem. Sure, the Demon Lord was absurdly powerful, but creating a spell that sends someone back in time, that's way beyond any magic Kyle knows. Suddenly, his stomach growls loudly. So off he goes to the kitchen. When Kyle walks in, he's stunned to see a full meal laid out for him. It doesn't take a genius to guess that Layla made it before she left. She used to do this all the time, especially since Kyle and his mom were too busy or too magically incompetent to cook anything edible. He pulls out a bowl, tastes the food, and is in heaven. It's been years since he had a proper meal. On the battlefield, survival meant choking down bland ration cubes in the middle of nowhere. A few minutes later, Theron strolls in, clearly looking for food. But once he sees all the empty plates stacked in front of Kyle, his face drops. The stew is gone. Every last drop. While Theron begins a passionate monologue about culinary betrayal, Kyle sits back, still trying to comprehend everything. Just hours ago, the two of them were fighting side by side against the Demon Lord. Theron had even stayed behind to buy him time. Now he's here, hungry and grumpy. Theron notices Kyle staring and asks if something's wrong. Kyle shakes it off and casually asks what year it is. Weird question, but Theron answers. It's the 24th of May, 2823. Also, Kyle's birthday. Theron says he'll forgive the feast theft just this once, but he's still starving. So he's heading to Leela's place to beg for food. He might even throw in a dramatic kneel if necessary. Pride doesn't matter when you're hungry. While Theron goes off to beg, Kyle stays in the kitchen thinking deeply. If he really has returned to the past, he needs to confirm some things, and there's only one person who can help. His mom. He He heads out to the shed and into the underground library, where she's likely buried in books. Sure enough, he finds her down there, nose deep in a tome. She's surprised to see him, since he never comes down at night, but he points out it's already morning, meaning she pulled another all-nighter. She apologizes, but Kyle isn't here to nag about sleep schedules. He tells her he has a question about magic theory. As one of the few archmages in the country, she's the perfect person to ask. She perks up and tells him to go ahead. Kyle asks if there are any known spells that can send someone back in time. Surprisingly, she says yes, though very little is known about them. Time magic is considered theoretical at best, and no mage is capable of actually casting it. The power required is simply too much. Even the greatest magician in history wouldn't be able to travel back more than a second. Kyle then asks if a magic item could make it possible. His mother thinks for a moment. Technically, if you had an item that could store enough energy over centuries, maybe. But it would take over 1,000 years to accumulate that much magic. Kyle presses further. What if someone used the forbidden right? Now his mom is alarmed. She demands to know where he heard about such a spell. Kyle lies and says he read about it in a book, and swears he'd never try it. She calms down and explains that the forbidden right allows someone to sacrifice life force in exchange for magic. It's dangerous and wildly unethical. Even if someone were mad enough to attempt it, the power still wouldn't be enough. You'd need to sacrifice half the humanoid population on the continent just to get close. And even then, you'd need an artifact capable of storing that much power, which doesn't exist. Or at least it shouldn't. But suddenly, she remembers something. She flips through one of her ancient texts and stops at a page detailing the divine dragon's heart, a legendary gem said to have powered the ancient kingdom of Sorrows for thousands of years. When the gem's energy ran out, the kingdom fell. She tells Kyle that if such an artifact still existed, it could make time travel possible. It's believed the gem was lost over a millennium ago, but if it resurfaced in demon hands, everything makes sense. Kyle realizes the gem he took from the demon lord must be the divine dragon's heart, and the spell must have been set to activate upon the demon lord's defeat. But what still puzzles him is, why would the demon lord go back in time? Before he can think more, Layla walks in. Kyle immediately apologizes for the intense, awkward hug that morning. He explains he had a horrible nightmare and that she died in it. That sobers Layla up. She understands now and forgives him. She smiles at him. That smile almost breaks him. In the future, their village was the first to fall during the invasion. Layla died in the chaos, and Kyle swore to avenge her. But now here she is, alive, safe, smiling. Layla notices he's gone quiet again and asks if something's wrong. But Kyle is lost in thought. 3 years from now, everything burns. Everyone he loves will be gone, unless he changes that future. He clenches his fists. No matter what it takes, he'll change fate. He's not going to lose her or anyone again. Kyle knows he only has 3 years before the Great Cataclysm, so the very next day, he gets to work. He starts training by summoning a mental image of the Demon Lord and charging in. But after a few swings and a couple of blocks, reality hits. His body is weak. Like, embarrassingly weak. It makes sense. By this point in time, Kyle had been living the lazy life of a certified couch potato. His combat skills are trash. The one thing going for him, his magic stats seem to have carried over from the future. So, he tries buffing himself with speed and strength enhancements, and still eats dirt. His body simply can't keep up with his magic. Conclusion? He needs to train hard. Meanwhile, Layla and Theron are spying on him from the bushes. From their point of view, Kyle has been running around yelling at nothing and falling over all morning. Concern levels rising. Then Ela, his mom, shows up and asks what they're doing. They explain that Kyle's suddenly working out like a madman, which is weird considering just days ago, he couldn't care less about training. Layla thinks maybe he's doing it for a girl. This crushes Leela's hopes. If he hasn't confessed to her, then it must be someone else. Fueled by jealousy, she storms in and shakes Kyle so hard he throws up. Realizing she may have gone a bit overboard, she makes it up to him by cooking his favorite lunch. Though still a bit queasy, Kyle forgives her. Since everyone's gathered, he brings up a question that's been on his mind. How do you force entire nations to take action? Everyone's confused, kind of a weird topic for lunchtime. After thinking it over, Ela lists a few ways. Get the kings on his side, become a powerful priest, or rise to fame as a legendary hero. And if all else fails, grow a mustache and commit war crimes to get noticed. Kyle thanks her for the colorful options, but he needs to unite the nations in less than 2 years, and the only realistic path is to become a hero. So, he heads straight to his room and starts speed reading every book he can find. Knowing what's coming gives him an advantage. He knows which myths are real and which are garbage. Theron walks in and is shocked to see Kyle voluntarily studying. He flops on the bed and asks, "Are you seriously trying to become a hero? You know that's not a job you can just apply for, right?" Kyle nods. He knows. Normally, you become a hero by slaying a demon king or saving the world. But since he already did that once and is technically prequel era now, he needs to prepare ahead of time. Step 1. Strength. Step 2. Cash. Theron gives him a look. Money? That's not very heroic. But Kyle is dead serious. Heroes don't accept payment for good deeds, but gear and travel aren't free. So yeah, he's gonna need a stash of gold. On top of that, he plans to gain favor with important people to build his reputation. Basically, the hero version of networking. To Theron, this is starting to sound less like hero and more like politician. Kyle isn't done. He also says he needs one more thing: luck. Because heroes always show up at the perfect time, and sometimes that requires a little behind-the-scenes manipulation. Theron raises an eyebrow. "You're not planning to create disasters just to save people, are you?" Kyle quickly denies it, but admits he's not above using some underhanded tricks to meet his goals. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure heroes aren't supposed to say that," Theron mutters. But then, more seriously, he asks the big question: why do you want to become a hero anyway? Theron can tell that being a hero isn't Kyle's final goal, it's just a stepping stone. Curious, he asks what Kyle's real objective is. Kyle admits he does have a reason, but it's not something he can share just yet. So for now, Theron just has to trust him. The next morning, Kyle informs Hila that he'll soon be heading off on an adventure. She supports the idea. Exploring the world is important after all. She asks if he told his mom, and he says yes, earlier that morning. However, he hasn't told Layla yet. Since he'll be gone for a while, Hila suggests he take Theron along. Kyle had planned to ask him anyway, so he thanks her, but it's the first Theron's hearing of any of this. Later, Kyle finds Layla and tells her he'll be leaving in 2 days. She's clearly upset, but she doesn't want to stop him from chasing his goal. When she asks where he's headed, Kyle replies that his first stop is the royal capital, Mad. Once he gets what he needs there, the real work begins. Layla says she has a favor to ask, but Kyle already knows what it is. She wants to come with him. He quickly shuts her down, saying he wants her to stay somewhere safe. She's about to argue, insisting that she's been training with the Oracle Warriors and won't be a burden. But Kyle silences her with a kiss and promises she'll be the first person he visits when he returns. Flustered beyond words, Layla gives in, asking only that he not do anything reckless. He agrees. The next day, Kyle goes shopping for supplies and invites Layla to join him. While walking through town, Layla spots something unusual: an elf standing by one of the market stalls. Elves aren't common in this region, so she's curious. But Kyle? He's shocked. That's not just any elf, it's Urza, someone who loved him deeply in the future, and even told him her true name, Exis, a sacred secret among elves. So stunned by her presence, Kyle accidentally blurts out Exis, which immediately puts Urza on high alert. In this timeline, she has no idea who Kyle is, and no random human should know her true name. She reaches for her sword, ready to attack. Desperate to avoid a public elf slaying, Kyle grabs her arm and tries to calm her down, but she's not having it. With no choice left, he whispers her true name again, putting her to sleep through an ancient elven technique. Urza collapses into his arms. Crisis averted, not quite. Layla saw the whole thing. And from her point of view, Kyle just casually knocked out a random elf girl in the middle of the market, and is now possibly kidnapping her. Explaining this one is gonna be rough. Back at his house, Kyle tries to convince Urza she imagined him saying her name. Unsurprisingly, she's not buying it. Only her parents know that name, so she demands to know how Kyle learned it. But there's no easy way to say, "We dated in the future and you told me during a tearful romantic moment." She threatens to kill him just to be safe, but Kyle pleads for time and promises to explain eventually. Urza, understandably, finds it hard to trust someone who casually drops her sacred name in public. So, Kyle makes an offer. He'll form a binding contract with her. This kind of contract is typically between humans and spirits, but in rare cases it can bind two people. The terms? Kyle must never reveal or misuse Urza's true name. If he does, instant, painful death. Urza is taken aback by how seriously Kyle takes it. She agrees, but says she can't form a contract until the next full moon, which is 3 weeks away. So, until then, she's sticking to Kyle like glue. Problem is, Kyle is leaving tomorrow. So now, Urza is forced to tag along to keep an eye on him. The next day, with bags packed, the team is ready to set off. Kyle says goodbye to his mom, and just as things are settling, Lee shows up. Turns out she's coming too, not because she trusts Kyle, but because she doesn't trust him to travel alone with Urza after that very dramatic elf encounter. The group finally sets off on their journey, and Theron almost immediately starts flirting with Urza, clearly taken aback by how pretty she is. But Urza shuts it down fast. She's not part of the party. She's just tagging along because she needs to stay near Kyle until they form a contract. Not that anyone is listening to her. Since Urza is with them now, Kyle says there's no need to go to the royal capital right away. Instead, they're heading for the Scarred Mountains to find the Magic Queen's labyrinth. Theron isn't thrilled. He thinks it's a wild goose chase. The labyrinth is legendary and supposedly so huge no one's ever made it through to the treasure. But Kyle reassures them. He's got a detailed map, drawn from memory, based on his future journey through the labyrinth. The others aren't convinced. From their perspective, Kyle probably bought a fake map from some shady vendor. Feeling a little bad, Urza jumps in and claims the paper is made from 1,000-year-old magic tree bark. Totally rare, totally legit. Of course, Kyle knows that's complete nonsense. He pulled it out of some dusty library book, but everyone believes Urza, not him. Still, even with a map, getting through the labyrinth would take forever. So Kyle proposes a new strategy: dig a tunnel. Yes, dig a tunnel. They start right away. This way, they can avoid all the deadly sawblade traps scattered inside. With Urza summoning an earth spirit to reinforce the tunnel, things go pretty smoothly. She even seems unusually motivated, barking at Kyle and Theron to work harder. After a long day of digging, they return to camp, where Layla has whipped up a feast. Everyone loves it. When Urza compliments her, she casually asks if Layla caught the bear they're eating. Turns out, yeah, she did, with her bare fists. Completely normal for her. After dinner, Urza uses spirit magic to create a hot spring in the mountain. She and Layla go for a relaxing soak, while Kyle has to physically restrain Theron from trying to peek over the wall. The next day, work resumes. While the others take a break, Urza pulls Kyle aside and demands answers. Why does he want to be a hero so badly? She knows the others haven't asked out of trust, but she doesn't trust him, especially after he used her true name. She's watched Kyle work nonstop, wearing weight-enhancing rings that make his body 9 times heavier than normal, yet he never complains. Clearly, there's more to this than wanting fame or glory. Just as Kyle is about to answer, his shovel hits something, a vault wall. He cuts her off and tells her to get the others. Once everyone gathers, Kyle kicks the wall down, revealing an enormous mountain of gold and treasure. Theron practically dives into the pile, convinced he'll never have to work again. Meanwhile, Kyle quietly slips away. There's a different treasure he's after, hidden deeper in the labyrinth. He finds his way to a secret chamber where an ancient, legendary sword awaits. One that accompanied him through countless battles in the future. As he steps closer, the sword's avatar materializes before him. Sylvia begins her grand speech, congratulating Kyle for conquering the labyrinth trials, but Kyle immediately clamps her mouth shut. He really doesn't want his friends finding out about her just yet. Sylvia, clearly offended, starts yelling about being disrespected, but Kyle just needs her to zip it for a second. Once she calms down, Kyle admits he knows she's a replica of the Queen of Salonia, Sarles, and, well, he didn't actually clear the labyrinth properly. He just dug a shortcut straight to the end. Sylvia is shook that he cheated her labyrinth so effortlessly, but Kyle says, "Look, just let me take the final trial and you'll understand." That trial. Pulling the sword so Sylvia can read his memories. As she scans them, she witnesses all the tragedy of the future, from the Demon Lord's reign of terror to the point where Kyle touches the divine dragon's heart and rewinds time. She's stunned. She never imagined time magic could work on such a massive scale, but since she saw it herself, it must be true. Meanwhile, the others notice Kyle is missing and start looking for him. Panicking, Kyle tells Sylvia to just play along. So when his friends show up, Kyle waves the sword and loudly announces, "Hey guys, I found an intelligent sword." Later, Sylvia is happily munching on Leela's cookies, claiming it's been centuries since she tasted real food. Layla asks if she's really the magic queen, but Sylvia explains she's just a fragment of her, a magical life form meant to evaluate intruders. If she found them unworthy, boom, vault explosion. But Kyle's interesting, so they get a pass. She also tells them to take the treasure bag lying around. It's magically connected to the vault. With their loot secured, the group heads to the royal capital. While there, Sylvia keeps trying to sneak off to explore food stalls, but Theron keeps dragging her back before she wanders off. The real reason they're in the capital: to upgrade their gear. Kyle brings them to an exclusive weapons shop where the receptionist almost laughs them off until Kyle drops a fat stack of gold. Suddenly, VIP access unlocked. Inside, they meet the shop owner, Fespa, who offers to help them gear up. Sylvia spots some swords on display and instantly recognizes them as the work of Melanus, a famous ancient craftsman. Fespa is shocked she could tell, but Sylvia casually mentions she knew Melanus, though his work was just okay and he threw tantrums when criticized. Naturally, Kyle yanks her away before she outs herself as royalty. Fespa shows off some top-tier gear, including a set of dragon-scale armor with all kinds of resistance magic. Kyle loves it and buys it on the spot, leaving Fespa speechless. It is ridiculously expensive after all. Kyle offers to get matching armor for Theron, but Theron refuses. He's not into the twinning thing. The others pick their gear too: spirit bracelets, gauntlets for Layla, and some power-boosting armor for Theron, though sadly it does nothing for his charisma. Once shopping winds down, Kyle asks if Fespa has any magic stones. He shows them an explosion stone, great for combat, but Kyle wants something more suited for reptilian monsters. So Fespa presents a cold enchanted magic stone, exactly what Kyle needed. Lizards are weak to the cold, so these cold enchanted magic stones should be super effective against them. The only catch? They're expensive as heck because cold enchantments are hard to pull off. But Kyle doesn't even flinch. He just says, "I'll buy all the cold stones you've got." Oh, and while he's at it, he wants all of Fespa's healing potions too. Fespa is speechless. That would cost a fortune. But Kyle isn't here to haggle. Instead of coins, he casually drops a bag of gems worth 10 million coins and says, "Let's just call it even." After that, the gang leaves the shop, but Theron is nervous that people might start whispering about how rich they are. Last thing they need is fantasy IRS chasing them down. Kyle shrugs it off, saying they're leaving the capital tomorrow. This shocks the others, especially since it's Layla and Theron's first time here. So Theron dashes off to live his big city life while Urza offers to show Layla around. Meanwhile, Sylvia tries to sneak off for snacks, but Kyle drags her back to the inn. They need to talk. He asks if she really thinks the future can be changed. Sylvia scoffs. It was never set in stone. She figures that when Kyle used the dragon heart, it plucked his soul from one timeline and dropped it earlier in another. Since the dragon heart still exists in this timeline, his very presence is already altering things. But unless they act, the great invasion is still coming. Knowing this, Kyle is determined to save the world, but he's curious. If the heart exists in both timelines, why is there only one of him? Sylvia explains one of the most forbidden magics: soul fusion. Back in ancient Salonia, they discovered that fusing two souls could boost magic power, but experiments on infants ended in disaster. In Kyle's case, his future and past selves probably fused perfectly since they're the same person, doubling his magic power. He might even have potential for the highest forms of magic if he survives the side effects. Sylvia promises to guide him, but only if he reports any weirdness. Later that night, Layla and Urza return from sightseeing. Layla is ready to sleep, but Urza suddenly remembers tonight's the full moon. She needs to perform the contract ritual with Kyle before it's too late. She rushes to find him and sees him training with Sylvia in the forest. Kyle had totally forgotten, and though he's exhausted, he agrees. As Urza draws the contract circle, she thinks about how this ritual is a sacred thing in her village, like a wedding vow. She never imagined her first time doing it would be with a half-asleep human. She finishes the circle and yells at Kyle to wake up. He stumbles up, they stand in the circle, and he recalls how he and Urza did this in their married life from his previous timeline. So, after vowing not to misuse her true name, he seals the deal with a kiss. Urza is frozen, completely stunned, then shoves him back, fuming. "You don't kiss unless it's a marriage contract, idiot." Kyle is confused. He thought that's just how it works. Urza is not amused. The next morning, as they leave the capital, Layla notices how tired everyone looks. Kyle admits he and Urza were up handling some stuff, but Urza refuses to elaborate. Meanwhile, Theron was up all night trying and failing to get a girlfriend. Even being rich didn't help. They're headed to Arkan, but Kyle gives a vague excuse that Sylvia's prophetic abilities pointed them there. When they arrive, they coincidentally witness Princess Melina's parade through town. The kind, beloved princess waves to her people, but Kyle knows that in 2 days she's fated to die. Her caravan is supposed to head to Scenes, a village recently attacked by hydras. She wants to show support, but ends up getting killed by one. Kyle mutters that it's the result of bad decisions, visiting a monster-infested village. Not smart. Sylvia wonders if it was an assassination masked as a monster attack, and Kyle admits there were rumors that her brother, Prince Carr, was involved, but nothing was ever proven. Regardless, it's officially recorded as a tragic accident. But to Kyle, it's also an opportunity to save Molina and make himself a hero. Kyle says that if he wants to be recognized as a hero, he needs to make his entrance feel natural and heroic, like it just happened spontaneously, but, strategically. Just then, Theron bursts into the room, saying he couldn't find out anything about Princess Melina's schedule. Kyle asks him why he was even looking into that, and Theron, being the hopeless romantic he is, says he wants to rescue the princess, and maybe spark a little romance in the process. Kyle internally cringes, realizing this was also his own plan. How embarrassing. Theron tells him to back off because he called dibs on Melina first, but Kyle assures him he already has more romantic drama than he can handle. He drops the bomb that Melina is in actual danger, once again using Sildonia's prophetic powers as his cover story. Theron, ever the believer, immediately accepts this and declares he'll just follow the princess around like a loyal, if slightly creepy bodyguard. He's unusually confident in his ability to stalk women, which makes Kyle very nervous. Please, no sabotage today. The next day, as Melina's convoy leaves the town, Kyle and the gang hide in the bushes to observe. The girls wonder how they can follow the convoy without drawing attention, and Sildonia casually says, "I got this." Then she turns into a hawk. Everyone is stunned, and she explains that she's just a magical projection created from the gemstone embedded in Kyle's sword. Her body can shapeshift easily. She flies above the convoy, while the others watch everything through the gemstone's feed, like magical live streaming. Of course, the boys briefly get distracted, realizing this power could be every pervert's dream, until Sildonia yells at them to focus, because stuff's going sideways in the convoy. The drivers suddenly start attacking the guards, and Kyle knows it's time to intervene. By the time he arrives, the traitors have defeated the guards and started a monster summoning ritual. But before they can finish, Kyle blitzes them with a speed buff and knocks them out cold. He ties up the baddies for later interrogation, just in case they know something useful. Meanwhile, Theron checks on Melina. She's unconscious, but alive. Just then, a hyena monster pounces at him, but he slices it down swiftly. Unfortunately, more hyenas surround the carriage, and things are heating up fast. The hyenas begin attacking the unconscious guards. Kyle asks Theron to drive the carriage to safety, but the reins are cut. Theron needs to tie them back together to move. And just when it couldn't get worse, a hydra starts approaching. Kyle feels the earth rumbling with its arrival and tells everyone their top priority is keeping Melina safe. He asks Theron and the girls to get her out of there, while he stays behind to stall the hydra. The girls protest, but Kyle insists it's not reckless. He actually has a shot at winning. Urza decides to trust him, and Kyle runs off to face the monster. Sildonia asks if he's seriously planning to solo a hydra, and Kyle says it depends on how many heads it has. He's confident he can handle a 3-headed one. Then the hydra appears. It has 8 heads. Kyle momentarily forgets how to count and nearly pees his pants. But hey, too late to back down now. He dodges the initial attacks with ease. When the hydra breathes poison gas, he shields himself with his enchanted robe. The gas instantly withers nearby plants, but Kyle's high-quality gear keeps him safe. He pulls out a blizzard magic stone from his bag and hurls it at the monster. The cold freezes the Hydra in place. Then he follows up with an explosion stone, blasting a chunk of its scaly body open. Seeing the opportunity, Kyle dashes in, blocks another poison breath with his robe, and slices off one of the Hydra's heads. Unfortunately, it grows right back, faster than a bad haircut. He keeps trying the same head-chopping strategy, with increasingly desperate energy, but the Hydra just won't stay down. And to make it worse, he's now out of blizzard stones. With the situation getting dire, Kyle goes for his final move. He activates his super speed skill, dashes toward the Hydra, and hides an explosion stone in his hand, preparing for his last-ditch gambit. The Hydra isn't fast enough to react, and Kyle charges straight through its chest like a magical bullet. He tears the wound open even wider and, with dramatic flair, shoves a bunch of activated explosion stones inside the monster's body. Just as he's about to make a heroic exit, the Hydra smacks him away like yesterday's leftovers. Battered and bruised, Kyle somehow drags himself to his feet. The Hydra, now severely annoyed, starts stomping toward him like it means business. But then, boom. The explosion stones go off all at once, blowing the beast to kingdom come from 3 different directions. The dramatic blast is so extra, it feels like something straight out of an Indian TV soap opera. Chunks of the Hydra are scattered everywhere like meat confetti. Sildonia casually remarks that he could have done that earlier and saved a few magic stones. Kyle, still catching his breath, says that it was a last-ditch move and way too risky to use regularly. Still, he's just glad he managed to beat such a powerful monster. Meanwhile, Urza and the others have taken care of their own share of beasties and rush over to support Kyle. But he walks up just then, casually claiming, yeah, that Hydra was tough, but not that tough. The girls are momentarily impressed until they catch a whiff. They all clutch their noses and inform Kyle that he reeks of grilled Hydra meat and should definitely take a bath before standing anywhere near them. Kyle is heartbroken. He expected praise and maybe a fan club, but instead, he gets told to scrub off the monster's smell. So, after the bath, he goes. Meanwhile, Theron is still busy making the carriage usable. Princess Melina and her servants remain unconscious, and Kyle suspects they've been poisoned. He tells the girls to administer antidotes, just in case. Then Theron hands him a pouch he found nearby. Kyle instantly recognizes it. It's a monster summoning pouch. This wasn't a random attack. It was a staged assassination attempt disguised as a monster ambush. Turns out, Prince Kais is behind the assassination plot, and worse, Zentos, Melina's own bodyguard, is working with him. When news of the failed attempt reaches them, Zentos decides to send a backup squad to finish the job. Back in the forest, evening has arrived. Melina finally regains consciousness and is in complete disbelief that she's still alive. Urza tells her to stay calm. Melina, clearly shaken, says she didn't think she'd ever wake up again. She asks if Kyle and his team saved her, and of course, Theron immediately jumps in to take all the credit. One well-aimed sucker punch from Lee's knocks him out cold. Kyle steps in to formally introduce himself and explains that they're a group of traveling adventurers who happened to witness the attack and rushed in to help. Just then, Melina's maid wakes up and immediately gets defensive, stepping between Melina and Kyle like a mother bear with trust issues. Melina, however, assures her that Kyle and his friends saved them and they're trustworthy. She gets up and surveys the battlefield, but she's no delicate princess anymore. She switches to full-on inspection mode, going over the dead drivers. Kyle tells her the traitors were already killing the guards by the time he arrived. That's when Sildonia interrupts, saying a squad of royal knights is heading their way. Kyle relays the news to Melina, who immediately panics. They have to run now. If the royal knights find them, she says, they'll kill not just her, but Kyle and his friends too. Kyle is confused. Why would her own people want her dead? She drops the bomb. It's Zentos. He's the one pulling the strings. Kyle is stunned. He finds it hard to believe that Zentos, her trusted bodyguard, could be behind such betrayal, but Melina is certain. She orders her maid, Arca, to burn all the bodies at the scene, so the knights waste time trying to identify her among them. Every second counts. They prepare the carriage for escape. Melina asks Kyle and his group to accompany her so she can explain everything along the way. Ever the helpful idiot, Theron tosses the monster summoning pouch into the flames too, figuring that if more monsters get summoned, it might stall the knights even further. Because when you're running from assassins, what's a few extra monsters for chaos? Kyle asks Melina if she's absolutely certain that Zentos is behind this. Melina, visibly annoyed, replies that she knows exactly what she heard. Yesterday, she got drugged, courtesy of the prince and Zentos. Right before passing out, she overheard her own brother celebrating like he'd won a lottery. Turns out she had fallen right into their trap. Now, all he had to do was stuff her into a carriage bound for Sains, claims she left on her own, despite the danger, and voila, monster chow. She always knew her brother was a greedy idiot, but she never thought of him as an actual threat because, well, he's kind of useless. But with Zentos on his team, that changes things. Normally, Melina would be escorted by Killen from the 5th Battalion for protection, but Killen is practically a celebrity now, always getting summoned to royal ceremonies. So this time, guess who got assigned to protect Melina? Yep, Zentos himself. In hindsight, she probably should have raised an eyebrow the moment her brother showed up for the trip. He had zero reason to be there. Kyle still finds it hard to believe Zentos would stoop to something so low. But he knows Melina isn't the type to lie. So if she says Zentos is the villain, then that's that. He reasons that since the assassination attempt failed, Zentos will likely launch Plan B soon. And knowing the guy, he's probably already drafting the press release blaming Kyle and his party for massacring Melina's guards to get to her. If they wanted to play it smart and selfish, they just ditch Melina and save their own skins. But that ship has sailed. She promises them a generous reward once they make it back to the royal capital safely, so hey, silver linings. The good news? Killen's 5th Battalion is supposed to arrive in Arkine by tomorrow morning. And when they realize Melina's missing, you can bet Killen will come charging in to find her. Kyle wonders if things will go south if Killen's and Zentos battalions cross paths, but Melina says the two groups are roughly equal in strength. If anything, that might give Zentos a headache, not them. Lus suggests they could just lay low in Sains until the drama blows over, but Kyle isn't sold. Zentos seems like the kind of guy who would burn down a whole village just to clean up a loose end. And considering he already killed royal guards to reach Melina, it's not a stretch to think he'd do the same to 100 innocent villagers. Risky or not, Kyle thinks their best shot is to head back to Arkine. With over 10,000 people in the city, there's no way Zentos can't just go full villain without attracting attention. Plus, if they link up with Killen's battalion, their survival odds just might go up from nope to maybe. Melina agrees with Kyle's plan, but there's a catch. If they turn back now, they'll bump right into Zentos' men. So, she looks at him and asks, "You got a sneaky little plan to slip past them." But Kyle, ever the cool cucumber, calmly replies that he's planning to cut straight through Zentos soldiers. No detours, no subtlety, just boom. They halt the carriage to prep for the madness. Thanks to Sildonia's aerial surveillance, they confirm that Zentos isn't with the battalion Big Relief. That means they just need to deal with the regular troops. And lucky for everyone, Kyle already has a plan, though it includes a lot of explosion stones, kaboom style. Now, there's a minor issue. They can't guarantee that Melina won't get hurt by the shockwaves. So, Lise hands her a case of high-tire healing potions and says, "Drink one if you even stub a toe." Melina, a little stunned, wonders just how loaded these guys are. All this gear must have cost a fortune, and it did. But apparently, money's not a problem when you're traveling with Kyle. Meanwhile, back at the capital, the prince is absolutely losing it. The assassination attempt on the princess failed, and now he's panicking like a student on exam day. Zentos reassures him that he's already sent men to finish the job, but the prince wants to know, why aren't you out there with your troops? Zentos explains that Killen will be arriving tomorrow morning, and once she realizes the princess is MIA, she's going to grill the prince like a suspicious mother. Unfortunately, the prince crumbles under pressure faster than a house of cards, so Zentos has to stick around and come up with an excuse for him. The prince tries to protest but is quickly reminded he's now deep in this plan and Zentos won't tolerate another screw-up. Meanwhile, as Melina's carriage is still on the run, one of Zentos' scouts races back and reports, "I saw the carriage turn around, it's headed this way." The vice commander quickly orders everyone to halt and ready their bows. But just as the carriage comes into view, boom, a bunch of explosion stones rain down from the sky. Yep, this was a well-timed aerial strike, coordinated with Sildonia. The chaos disorients the soldiers, and the carriage blazes straight through like a bat out of hell. Urza uses wind magic to protect the carriage from the blast, while Theron, having the time of his life, chucks explosion stones like he's in some magical dodgeball tournament. Not exactly graceful, but hey, it gets the job done. However, once the vice commander shakes off the dust, he shouts at the remaining soldiers to get back on their feet and continue the chase. The team's not out of the woods yet. They've got to keep moving if they want to stay free. Unfortunately, due to all the explosions, one of the carriage wheels gets blown clean off. There's no way they'll fix it in time, so the group has no choice but to ditch it and continue without. Lise tells Princess Melina and her maids to hop on the horses, while Kyle plans to use a windwalker spell to keep up on foot. The bad news? There's zero chance they'll outrun the remaining soldiers like this. Kyle says someone needs to stay behind and act as a decoy. That's someone. Theron. He's busy fiddling with the broken carriage, hoping he can fix it, until Kyle casually tells him it's his job now to stall the royal guards. Before Theron can even grumble and protest, the rest of the crew is already leaving. Soon after, the soldiers catch up to Theron, who greets them with a white flag and the acting chops of a desperate soap opera villain. He starts begging for forgiveness, claiming it was all Kyle's idea and that he was abandoned. He even offers them a giant bag of gold in exchange for his life. But the vice commander quickly realizes Princess Melina isn't with him anymore and coldly orders the troops to kill Theron so they can move on. Meanwhile, Urza asks Kyle if it was really okay to leave Theron behind, since those soldiers definitely aren't planning to spare him. Kyle admits he would have preferred a bloodless option, but this was the only way. Urza, still shocked, questions whether Kyle really just sacrificed his best friend, but Kyle clarifies that's not what happened. Urza only just met Theron, so she wouldn't know, but Theron is way stronger than either Kyle or Lise. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, plot twist. Theron beheads the vice commander in one clean strike. Turns out his groveling surrender was all an act to catch the guards off guard. Now that they're rattled, he removes his heavy gravity training bracelets and readies himself for a 1v30 showdown. He charges forward and instantly decapitates 3 soldiers, then darts back in to repeat the process. A few try to sneak up behind him. Rookie mistake. He tosses an explosion stone at their feet, blowing them skyward and scaring off the horses. Now the soldiers are stuck. No escape. Kyle explains to Urza that Theron may lack magic aptitude and have the personality of a circus clown, but when it comes to swordplay, Kyle can't even compare. Theron trains relentlessly and wears gravity bracelets nonstop to push his limits. And yes, he's also terrifying in battle. So why act so goofy all the time? Urza wonders. Well, that's part of the act, to make enemies underestimate him. That said, he's still kind of a weirdo regardless. Kyle is confident Theron will win, but against 30 royal guards, he'll need to go full lethal mode. They wanted to avoid unnecessary deaths, since the soldiers are just following orders. But war doesn't always leave room for mercy. After several intense minutes of fighting, only 8 soldiers remain, and Theron is getting tired. He drops his sword and tells the survivors they don't need to fight anymore. His mission, to buy time for Kyle and the others to reach Arkan, is complete. He even offers to let them go if they leave peacefully. The soldiers hesitate. They're bruised, battered, and frankly, not paid enough to deal with this. So they gather their wounded comrades and begin limping away, until Theron, true to his ruthless rep, throws another explosion stone and charges in to eliminate the survivors anyway. Brutal? Yes. Unnecessary? Probably. In character for Theron? Absolutely. Meanwhile, back in Arkan, Zentos realizes something's wrong. He hasn't received a single update from his men. Suspicious. He decides to investigate personally, leaving a few troops to babysit the prince while he rides off into the forest. High above, Sildonia spots Zentos heading toward the group and immediately alerts Kyle. Big scary night incoming. Unfortunately, Zentos spots her too and blasts her out of the sky with alarming precision. Yep, it's definitely him. Kyle, now certain who they're dealing with, tells Melina to hide in the woods. He also asks Urza and Theron to take her and flee if anything feels off. Melina asks if Kyle is really planning to fight Zentos, the strongest knight in Zergus, alone. Kyle admits he would have rather avoided this fight, but he doesn't have a choice. Melina, curious, asks why he keeps talking about Zentos like he knows him personally. Is there something he's not telling her? Kyle freezes, unsure what to say. Thankfully, Melina drops it, not wanting to pressure the guy risking his life for her. Later, Zentos finds Kyle standing alone in the forest road. He asks if Kyle has been aiding Melina, and Kyle calmly confirms it. He then asks why Zentos came alone. Why not bring his battalion? Zentos explains he didn't want more men dying in a battle they didn't sign up for. That earns him a sliver of respect. Kyle, still hoping to avoid bloodshed, offers Zentos a pardon from the princess if he surrenders, and begs him to explain why he's doing all this. He doesn't believe Zentos is the type to be motivated by status or gold. But Zentos isn't in the mood for monologues. No point explaining anything to someone who's about to die, he says, drawing his sword. Both men cast strength and haste spells, then charge. Zentos opens with his signature illusion magic, but Kyle dodges and counterattacks, forcing Zentos to retreat. Shocked, Zentos stares him down. No one's ever countered that spell on the first try. That's when it hits him. Kyle knows this technique because in the previous timeline, Zentos was the one who taught him everything he knows about magic swordsmanship.